All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for who, Peter?
Rookies, rookettes, and semi-pros.
Oh boy, here we go. Flipping Houses for Rookies. All right, and I have Peter Kikola with me, the second rookie in existence, as we've been so informed, eh?
Well, I think I'm moving up to semi-pro level.
Okay, there you go. I got that as soon as you mentioned it.
Yeah, come on. I need a new designation. I know it blows the name of things, but I've been at this for a while. Give a dog a bone here.
There you go. All right, we're on episode 419, 419, and today's episode title is Two Best Creative Real Estate Strategies for Rookies Today.
Mm-hmm.
Two best creative real estate strategies for rookies today. And here is the description. You ready?
Yep.
Survey says too many of our rookies are feeling overwhelmed when it comes to creative real estate strategies in today's day and age. Well, today you are in for a treat. We are about to explore two deal strategies that you can do immediately after listening to today's episode. Our agenda in this unique conversation is to reveal how you can lock in gargantuan profits before you commit to the seller for the purchase. Plus, we will cover some clever secrets on how to have confidence and not lose your nerve when making deals with sellers. All while making five-figure paychecks during your learning curve without the weight of heavy down payments or fear of being tied to a mortgage, and only having the risk of what most spend for a family dinner at a diner.
Mm-hmm.
Get ready to supercharge your creative real estate game with these two strategies that will have you thinking outside of the box and seizing opportunity like a pro. So, if you are ready to break free from the ordinary, let's start the journey together now. So we're going to start off with what I call housekeeping. That's all the little stuff that we have to do to make sure everybody's set up and in the world of Bill, I guess. I'm Planet Bill, or Flipping Houses for Rookies. Actually, this is Planet Bill and Pete at this particular point, right? All right, so first of all, make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're watching us or listening to us. Make sure you like us. You could dislike us if you want, but please tell us why. Leave a comment if things are worth speaking of. This podcast is not a podcast of doing this. We're not trying to get you to do anything. This podcast is 419 episodes as of this point to help you with your thinking about creative real estate. If you want to do it or if you want to implement stuff, I have courses and coaching and software and all kinds of stuff behind us that does all of that stuff. Matter of fact, there isn't much doing with creative real estate these days because our software called Creative REI Reply does 90% of the work for you. It does all the heavy lifting for you. Basically, the only thing you do nowadays is talk to sellers on the phone and push a few buttons and generate paperwork. But anyways, I've gotten out of my realm here. So there isn't much work to do anymore in creative real estate. You just got to talk to sellers and make deals, which is what we concentrate on with these podcasts. And these podcasts come off as a little bit of theory, but there's always a lot of data because if your mind could be wrapped around the, it's kind of like if you could really understand the recipe of the cake, then the cake tastes good, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we record this podcast every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we do that, we live stream on 2 YouTube channels. One is Flipping Houses for Rookies. The other is Creative REI Reply. We also live stream on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you go to any one of those platforms, you can join the podcast. If you have questions during the podcast about the podcast, then please put it in wherever you can type on that platform, and I will get that right in front of me. I have a screen in front of me that will allow me to answer your questions, or Peter to answer your questions. If the questions are outside of the topic that we're talking about with the podcast, just send us a support ticket at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand corner, you can see the support ticket, or you can go to creativereireply.com, and the same thing, there's a support ticket on the top right side. Okay? In the meantime, don't forget to like us. Don't forget to save us. Don't forget to subscribe, all that good stuff. Okay? We're through that. We're through that 6 minutes of hell.
Really?
It takes 6 minutes every week to read the title. That's why we go an hour and 7 minutes, because the podcast is actually an hour, but it takes us 6 or 7 minutes to do all the housekeeping.
That's not bad. I've been on casts that were like 15 minutes of yap, and it was only a half an hour podcast. So I think you're doing all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well.
Okay, Pete. Let's jump right in today by asking this question.
Mm-hmm.
Why on God's green earth would we as investors overpay for a property in today's economy? Why? And that's the premise of today's podcast.
And that's how I got here many years ago at one of my little weekend trainings before I called you up. And the last question of the 3-day weekend was, okay, here's a house, blah, 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 over leveraged, too much money, no equity. What are you going to do? And after 3 days, 50 people in the audience stared at each other going, I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now we know the answer, but tell us again what we do.
Yeah. Truth is, so the follow-up question to that, I skipped ahead. The follow-up question to that is, can we overpay and still make money or profit from it?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Truth is, in today's economy, your seller must feel foolish saying no to your offers. And if they are not, then you're probably giving away about 40% of your deals. Maybe more, maybe 60% in today's economy. I mean, think about it. Why would somebody wholesale a property these days for 60 cents on a dollar when there's appreciation that is the highest it's been in years? Well, it's not right this moment, but it has been since COVID.
Still going.
Right? So why would someone want to give up 30 or 40% equity in their property when it's going up 1 or 2% a week or a month? Right? Or there's 20 buyers looking for that house, and there's 10 million investors like us. Right? I mean, talk to any seller for real these days, and they will tell you, oh yeah, I get 5 text messages a day, which is, hyperbole. It's a dramatic thing that they're saying. But the point is that they even think that we caused that. We have caused that. Right? All right. And if you're not having your seller feel foolish saying no to your offers, right? If that's not happening, well, you're on the outside looking in, or on the sidelines of the game watching guys like you and I make deals. Okay? So if you're not making consistent deals, there's something wrong with you or the way you're working the system. And I know that's a harsh invalidation, but it's just the truth. I mean, I'm all over it with us right now because our deal structures have slowed down. So I'm all over that. What the hell's going on? Which is part of the reason why I'm making some of these podcasts, is as I'm going through the issues, I'm kind of creating like some policy on them, or kind of like, figuring things out, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But by survey of my email list a few weeks ago, it seems many, many, many fall short when trying to do deals, right? Even more important, don't actually have the little known secret we will reveal today on how to have confidence and not lose your nerve when making deals with sellers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So here's the story. Since COVID, we have figured out one simple fact. One simple fact. And when I mean we, even though Peter, this is ad hoc for Peter because he's not heard anything I'm about to say, he's part of this process because he gives me feedback of our clients. And I mean, he's on our coaching calls and he's around me all the time giving me feedback,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes, Peter, you'll recognize this. You'll say things or do things, and then I'll come back and give it right back to you. And you're like, oh, I didn't think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh yeah, that's totally correct. Or like for example, your sentence that you regurgitated,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's more important to you, to get your price or more profit?
Mm-hmm.
Or, and like we haven't used that in 4 years or 5 years, and you thought of it and we're regurgitating it, and now I'm like all over with it. I'm like everything, emails and podcasts and articles, and I'm like writing about it all over. You know what I mean? So your feedback is important. Anyways,
well, we have a lot of history, a lot of content.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot, and sometimes we just move on from something because we think of something else to do. But it's gold, and then you go back. Oh crap! What happened to that? There's a lot. You go through your files sometimes, like, oh man, look at this thing I wrote 7 years ago. There's very good stuff floating around. It's a lot to keep your hands on.
Yep. Yeah, I should really put it all in books so we can study it in books and stuff, but I haven't gotten that good. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a prolific writer, but not that much. All right. Since COVID, we figured out one simple fact.
Mm-hmm.
Sellers want all cash or to be overpaid.
Mm-hmm.
Which means for us to survive, we need to do one or the other, and sometimes both, to make deals. Right?
Yeah.
So to repeat it, so the thing that we figured out, the single datum right now,
mm-hmm.
is sellers want all cash or to be overpaid.
And or both.
Which means for us to survive, we need to do one or the other, and sometimes make both of them happen mm-hmm. to do a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Which means it boils down to 2 deal structures. Now, I have 7 deal structures, but if you notice, we don't talk about them anymore.
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't talk about them anymore is because unless you're a seasoned investor or a dedicated investor and you're spending money and you're outflowing to hundreds of names a day, sometimes thousands, but usually hundreds of names per day, right? Sorry, my computer just flashed up that I have an antitrust problem. I'm like, what the hell is that? Anyways, I have no idea what the hell that was. So, and I totally got distracted. Sorry about that. If you're digging deep in multiple farm markets, then the subject twos can be found and the seller finance deals can be found, and those other types of deals. But for the most part, when you're talking to sellers, the first thing is, and 97% of them want all cash.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that don't want all cash, they want to be overpaid because they were trained during COVID to get more money than what the house was worth.
Mm-hmm.
And oh yeah, by the way, just in case you're curious, the repercussions in the wake of that, NAR is getting sued for all of that.
Uh-huh.
right, and have lost for $418 million. And as of August 2024, the way they pay their commissions are completely different. We have podcasts on that, so go back and look for that, right? The point is that real estate is changing. No, that's not true, because I've said that multiple times. Real estate is changing, and I've lied to you. 100% lied to you.
Oh, come on, what do you mean?
Real estate has changed. It's not is changing. It has changed.
But we just hadn't noticed it, right?
We're here, yeah. And it's still moving, which is what I keep talking about, but it has changed, right? Because sellers want all cash or they want to be overpaid. And that's what's changed, right?
Yeah. And I just dawned on me, just to voice it, the two strategies that we're hanging on to, the sellers keeping the deed, which means that they get to keep a lot of the money. On those other deals, when we have the deal of the deed, we get to have a lot of benefits from having the deed. So to make it profitable for the sellers, we're leaving them the deed in their name, either the cash sale or the terms deal. They get all those benefits as an owner of the property. So I'm just like, oh, that's what the difference is. So here, you can keep your deed so you can have all the profits, unless we find that particular person who he wants to shed the deed, and then that provides.
So that's all correct. It's a little deep, but yeah, that's all correct. My point that I'd like to emphasize off script is this. My job, which I am actually revamping right now, because my job is to get and I want to talk about this after the podcast. This is something I want to talk to you about. I want you to help me with. I know usually I help you with other things, but I want you to help me with this. My job is to get the user, my students, whether it's a Creative REI Reply user or a coaching client or both, the transformation of what they want quickly. My job is to transform them quickly. And usually that transformation is a big fat check in their pocket.
Okay.
So the transformation starts with that. Money doesn't solve all problems, but it definitely helps, right? So the transformation of going wherever you are financially to actually doing deals is my job. So in the background, I'm constantly thinking, how could I make that transformation as quick as possible, right? What I want, my world, and I never talk about what I want because it's not about me, right? It's about the people that are voting for me with their wallets. They're buying things from me or paying me to help them, right? But what I want is the transformation is so solid and so quick and such a change, a memorable change, that it's like Netflix and they just binge. They binge watch the series, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I am constantly working on, and that's why these podcasts and this information is constantly popping up. I mean, I don't know what people think about my information other than the reviews and stuff I get. But that's why I'm constantly breaking things down and trying to make them simpler and simpler and simpler and easier and easier and easier and faster and faster and faster to get. Because that's my goal in life, is to get as many people as I can to make that transformation, to change their life and start getting those big checks so they can do their charity and they can do their live life freedom and go on vacations and do things that human beings should do on planet Earth instead of the things that their boss wants them to do.
That's right.
All right. So anyways, enough of that. It boils down to these two strategies, all this stuff that I'm talking about. And one is wants all cash, and two is wants to be overpaid. Okay. And by listening today, we are going to reveal our tested and proven research, right, on how we do these deals now to make $3,000. And honestly, Peter, I say this to make $3,000. I don't know anybody that's made $3,000 recently. I
It's too
don't
low.
know anybody. Yeah,
Too low.
it's usually 5 or 10 grand easily, and I'm going to show that to you today. And honestly, if you take our advice today, 50, 60, 80 grand is common if you do it correctly.
Hmm.
But I advertise 3 to 5 to $10,000, and a lot of times way more within 30 days. It's within 30 days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not hyperbole. That's not like some, marketing or some speech. No, this is me being on 3 coaching calls weekly, or at least 2 weekly and 1 bi-weekly, right? And just watching students and listening to students and helping students and answering support tickets and all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, I think I'm bragging, but I had the right to, because I don't know where you're going to find a software owner like myself who's the guru, which I don't want to be a guru, but I am in my universe, in my software system anyways, right? Because we have hundreds of users that are always asking questions. I just recently, because of the support tickets, changed my ability to communicate with my head support person. She now texts me with people's problems so we can answer support tickets quicker and their deal strategies. And I have to tell you, I don't go more than a day or two without having to answer a support ticket for people doing deals, which means the software works, right?
Yeah.
We get on an hour support call on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and it's supposed to be an hour. And seldom I'm like trying very hard to shut it down at 90 minutes, because we just have so many deals and so many things to talk about, because people are doing business with the software because it works, right? All right. So enough of that. I sound like I'm promoting Creative Area Replay, but I just want people to get that these podcasts are not just because I read a book or it's ad hoc or something like that. It's from especially my life's experiences with not only our deals, but with deals my customers are doing. And I hear them every day. Every day somebody talks to me about a deal. I hear about deals all over the country. And I feel completely blessed and honored to have that ability, right? Because it just teaches, until you have to teach somebody how to do something, I'm not sure you really know how to do it.
No, it's true. And something that you're not saying that I bet is 1,000% true. You also hear the problems that people have, the trouble they run into, the uncertainties and the questions and the difficulties. So people that are listening with worries and problems and difficulties, you hear those all the time and have solutions for that stuff.
That's right.
That's a big deal.
And to your point, we're 2.5 years into Creative Area Replay, and we promote that we do the documents for you, and we have a self-filled, you just push a button and it fills in all the documents. So we do all the documents for you. We do all the legal documents for you. And one of our documents is a memorandum. 2.5 years, Peter. 2.5 years we've been using this memorandum.
Yeah.
And I got a support ticket yesterday, and they're like, "Where's the appreciation on this document?" As one of the numbers. I'm like, they're doing something wrong. And I went through it, and I'm like, you know what? I went into our system, your and I system, and I randomly picked a customer, and I printed a memorandum, and sure as crap, it's not there.
Well, I'll have to go look again myself then.
See what I mean? It's just what you're saying. It's like these type of things happen to me weekly. Like, holy cow! And we just keep refining and refining and refining, and it's 2.5 years later, and it's got damn good. Right?
Yeah.
Anyways, let's start with number 1, all cash.
Yep.
I've started to call this my Zelter system. So why don't you tell people what a zealot is?
Well, a zealot, let's see, ZEALOT. It's somebody who's a real supporter of something. To the point it might go a little overboard sometimes, but it's a real hardcore supporter of someone, something.
Right.
Religious zealot, political zealot, food zealot, exercise zealot. Hey, you're exercising too much. Calm down.
Right. So it's a person who is fanatical and uncompromising in pursuit of. A person who is fanatical and uncompromising in pursuit of. So the word took me 2 years to figure it out. I've been wanting to do this for 2 years. You know this because I've tried many of them. I've said, what do you think of this word? What do you think of that word? Right?
Yeah.
So a Zelter is someone that is uncompromising, fanatical, and in pursuit of helping their sellers and their buyers.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a Zelter is.
And it's not a zealator, right? It's not a zealator.
Yeah, there is no and there, when you say realtor, it's spelled Realtor. There is no A. There is no A in there. Realtor. It's realtor.
Can we
not
say
realtor?
Can we say realtor? Can we say
No, it's
realtor? We do that?
It's realtor, right? But I
Oh.
think our East Coast buddies, my East Coast buddies, you know, the New Yorkers and Jerseys, and anyways, we're way behind here. So step number one, number one, all cash offers.
Yeah.
We're going to use what I call my Zelter system or Zelter system, right?
Yep.
Which will soon turn into our Zelter Association down the road. I went and bought URLs yesterday.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, man.
So this is the reason why. If your seller wants all cash, well, give it to them. But because most people think, oh, that's not a creative real estate deal. Hospucky. Not true.
What'd you say? House Bucky what?
Hospucky.
I never heard that. Sorry.
Yeah, I made it up.
Okay, good. All right, that makes sense. You made it up. Go ahead.
In other words, I was trying to prevent from saying bullshit. But now I just said it. So there you go.
All right.
The Zelter system works parallel or very similar than the Realtor system.
Mm-hmm.
Except we use option agreements and the Realtor uses a listing agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the Realtor has a 6-month, very harsh, very aggressive, very
prohibitive.
Yeah, it's like criminal, like they're putting you in prison, in Realtor prison, and throwing away the key for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where our option agreement is very flexible, and I'm going to go over all this in a minute, but our option agreement is very flexible, and we're going to do 90 days. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, I spent 45 minutes yesterday for this podcast, and I gave up, but I actually made a grid of the pros and cons of realtors and creative real estate. So I was just
making notes. What's the relation Zelters and realtors?
Yeah, so I have that. I just got to find it, and I'm gonna release that. But I ran out of time yesterday. Okay. But the big thing is that we're much more flexible, and I'm going to tell you, as I go through this, I'm going to give you the benefit. The main benefit is the money. How we're going to sell it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But the main point that I'm trying to make now is the difference between a realtor and a Zelter is the agreement. So first of all, there's a 6-month agreement with them. Second of all, there's a 3-month agreement with us. And most important, because we're I guess investors is what I'm trying to say. We're more flexible. We don't need to have the house look pretty. I mean, we prefer it to be pretty, but we're going to handle objections and sales and all that stuff much different than a realtor because they don't study that stuff unless they work for a big agency, mm-hmm. Right? And even more important than that, because our option gives us a small equity share. So when we sign an option with someone, it gives us a small equity share and the right to sell without the obligation. We don't need a fancy license to do this because we're actually considered part owner.
That's right.
Right? Just by virtue of the document itself. Right? And this is very cool, but let's get down to the math because that's the most important part. Right? Because I could do a whole podcast on options and why we're different than realtors. Right? But we're not here for that today. So if our seller's asking $300,000, which, by the way, the average price of a house in America right now is $419,000, but I remember the math for $300,000. I don't know why, but I keep saying that because I have farm markets that are 150,000, and I have students with farm markets with 6 and 800,000. So I think 300,000 is good for our audience, right? So if the seller is asking $300,000 for a house worth 300,000, they're asking 300, but it's worth 300,000. They're not asking 300, but it's worth 250. It's worth 300,000, right?
Yeah.
And the seller sold it for sale by owner. It's going to cost them about 10% for their closing costs, and most don't know that.
Right.
And if they use the realtor system, it's about 15%, and most don't know that. And I've had many students rail up against me and say, well, in Texas, it's not that much money. I had a coaching client one time that told me that it's not that much money. But the reason why is because they're looking at the settlement statements and they're looking for all that money on the settlement statement. But you can't find that money on a settlement statement. You can't find 15% on a settlement statement because one of the numbers is 3% negotiating cost. That's not going to be on a settlement statement. So if I'm asking $200,000, right, 3% would mean that I got a discount of $6,000. I only paid $194. You're not going to see that on a settlement statement, right?
Yeah, it starts with the number you actually sold and not what you wanted.
Right.
You'd have to go from what you originally asked for and then do the math. And that's long gone, that number.
Right. And the things that the other things that you're not going to see on a settlement statement is the 3% that we use for repairs, right? Or we have to give back a seller concession to bribe the seller. I'm sorry, the seller has to give back a seller concession or give back money in a closing to pacify the buyer to stay in the deal because the inspector came in and spooked them. So there's 6% out of the 15% right there. And then you got the 5% for the realtor. So now there's 11% just in those three things. And two of them you don't see on the settlement statement.
Yeah.
Right. So when somebody asked me when he was asking me, I want to see it on the settlement statement, it doesn't show on the settlement statement.
I got it.
Right. These are things that are outside of the deal, but they're part of the transaction. And by the way, they are directly coming out of the seller's pocket. Right, which is going to change with the new as of August 2024. All that's going to change because now the seller has the right to say to the realtor, I don't want to pay the buyer's realtor commission. So sellers are no longer going to pay 5%. They're going to get away with 2.5%.
Yeah.
But that means now the buyer has to now pony up that 2.5%. And right now, banks aren't eligible to lend that 2.5%. That's not part of their policy. They don't lend that money.
Oh, interesting.
So that means as of August of 2024, if a seller does that, which most probably will, right? If a seller does that, that means that the buyer will now need to come up with his down payment, his closing cost, and the realtor fee. And that's a big chunk of dough.
And he's going to, if he doesn't have it, he's going to hit the seller to drop the price, isn't he?
Yeah. All right. So what means top dollar for the seller would be $270,000. So on a $300,000 house, 10% is 30 grand. So that means top dollar for the seller would be $270 because there is no negotiating. The buyer did not, get the price down. They got top dollar. They got the most amount of money they can get. They advertised it for $300 and they sold it for $300 and they got to the closing table and they got $270,000, give or take.
That's when you have a brilliant line. Remember this one? You say to the seller, so if I give you $270, you're getting your asking price, aren't you? Because they think the asking price is $3. It's actually what they're going to get is the real asking price when it's all over.
Because most don't take in consideration when they're selling a property, the closing costs. They think it's just the 5% for the realtor. Now that's FSBO. 270 is with a FSBO. If they're going to do it with a realtor system, they're going to clear 255. Right. But suppose we offer $275,000. And instead of 60 days, it's 90 days with an option.
Instead of 6 months.
Yeah. Whatever I said.
Well, you said 60 days.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. Thank you. Yeah. So instead of being 6 months, it's 3 months.
Right.
Now, the seller, because they're at their cash price with the for sale by owner, they're getting 270. Now we're offering 275.
Mm-hmm.
And these are rough numbers, okay? So don't like hold a gun to my head, but just for the demonstration purposes, right? So now that means the sellers get an extra $5,000. So we're overpaying for the property.
Mm-hmm.
As an investor, usually we got to underpay for a property. We need equity, we need all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can now pay attention. I'm gonna start over so you can get these numbers, because I need to paint this picture in your mind. So on a FSBO on their own cash deal, they're going to get 270, and they're on their own. Nobody helps them.
Mm-hmm.
They get us to sign an option with them. They're going to get 275, and they have all of our assistance, and they're getting more money. You see the benefits?
Mm-hmm.
We're not charging them 5%. We're getting our buyer to pay it. We're not charging the seller. We're getting the buyer to pay it, which that's the number one difference between a realtor and a Zilter. A realtor charges the seller. A Zilter charges the buyer for the transaction. Okay, so instead of getting 270, they're getting 275. Now we could market that property at 280, right?
Yep.
Which means we make $5,000 for doing the transaction, right?
Yep.
But we're going to get a lot of attention in our marketing because we're going to be $20,000 below market value.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, we could even offer the seller 280 and market it for 290 and be $10,000 below market value, right? And then we would get some blood in the water so the sharks can circle, right?
Yep.
Now, I keep going off the topic because I really have too much content to cover today. The thing to do, and we talked about this in podcast in the last podcast, I don't remember which one it was, 414 or 415.
Mm-hmm.
The thing to do is to stack those option agreements, just like the realtor does. They get listing agreements, they get 5-10 listing agreements, and then sooner or later one of them pops. In the next 3 months, one will pop. So if you got 2 listing agreements a week, 2 options a week, and you now had 8 options at the end of the month, next month you're going to get another 8. Next month you're going to get another 8. But in the meantime, the first month, 1 or 2 of those deals will pop off.
Yep.
Right? This is the Zilter system. Just keep getting option agreements and stacking them so that once they're found by buyers, you make your 5, 10, 15, 20 grand. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's an interesting fact for today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, the realtor system is dismantling. Okay. And here's the reason why I think it's dismantling. They used to have a lock on or control of the buyers through their multiple listing service.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But in today's world, well, that's not true. Right. There are too many websites out there that you can place the house on the market with, right? And sell the property today. The online community is huge, right? So just to make my point, head on over to podcast number 414, and there's a list of 101 ways. Now, are there 101 ways there? Websites change, things change, but there's plenty. There's more than 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe there's. I went through the list not too long ago, and there was a couple links that don't work. They went out of business, right? But whatever. I mean, even if you get 90, it's still a lot, right? Now, does that make sense? That's the Zilter system.
Yeah.
You're going to get options, and you're going to stack them. In other words, you're going to get 2 a week, get 8 a month, and just that should be your goal. Just keep going, and then all of a sudden next week somebody's going to close. You're going to make $5,000 or $10,000, and then next month you're going to have 16 of them. So now you're going to get 2 closings, and then next month you're going to have 8, 16. What is it? 24.
24 and maybe 3.
Yeah. So now you're going to get 3 closings because you got them, and especially if you use Creative REI Reply, it's all automated for you. 90% of this is all automated for you. So you just go to and then there you go.
Well, that solves the problem of, you spend your time buying something, then you spend your time selling it, and you stop looking for new properties because you're too busy selling one.
Exactly.
So it solves that problem. So it's just much less time so you can keep moving.
You know why? Because another reason, I hope you're writing these down because I won't remember them all. Another reason, another difference between the Realtor and the Realtor is the Realtor sells the property. The Realtor sells the paperwork that controls the property.
Yeah.
So we're buying and selling paperwork. We're not buying and selling the property. The Realtor pays attention to the property. They come in and they're, you got to do these renovations. You got to paint this. You got to do that, because they're selling property. They're not selling the paperwork. We're buying an option for $100 and we're selling it to our buyer for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. They're buying the right to buy the property without the obligation. And we legally can do that without a license. All right. Our second offer, where the seller wants to overpay, wants to be overpaid, the offer has to be so outrageous, the seller will feel foolish saying no. Right? And we have figured out how to pay up to 70% over market value and still make $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, and a lot more if you listen to what I'm going to tell you. This is basically the same concept as our Realtor system, except instead of finding a buyer to bring the seller all the cash, right? Within 30 to 45 days, we ask the seller if they can wait 36 months for their cash out. Okay. Now, let's back up to what I just said there, because again, I know I'm going to get in trouble with time here, but back up to what I just said here, because I just said something crucial that virgineers may not understand. Who's supplying the money in the deal, on the deal we just spoke of?
The buyer.
So why do we need private lenders and hard money guys and banks and all that stuff?
Well,
we don't need any of that, right?
No.
So why are our students out trying to do all this stuff when, if they just listen to what we're saying here and this is why I'm telling you why I start the podcast stuff. Your thinking has to change. Yeah. It's not your doing this, it's your thinking. This is one of those thinkings that need to be changed.
They're watching too much television, Bill. I think we need a national television show to explain how this one works.
Right.
Let's go nationwide on TV.
Well, the ones on TV are different, because the seller wants their money now on an ugly house. And so because they're giving such a discount, they want money now. They're not willing to wait. So because the renovation guy needs 2, 3, 4, 6 months to renovate, they have to come up with the money, and that's where private lenders come involved. But when you're selling pretty houses and you can buy them and sell them within 30 days without doing any work, this is how we do national deals. This is how a realtor can go national without a license, is exactly using our Realtor system. Right?
That's right.
It's how they can go national, because they don't need a license to do this, but it works like their system, so they already know how to do it. They don't have to re-educate themselves.
They can't get a license in every state. That's not practical.
Right. All right. So here's what happens is the second strategy, right, is when they say yes to being able to wait for 36 months for their cash out, in other words, three years, we explain the way to do this is to turn the seller into the bank, so they have no landlord obligations and take monthly payments for the 36 months. So our lease with an option is written in a manner that the buyer does all the landlording and the seller is technically the bank. They're just collecting money. They're just They're just holding on. It's like they're giving the buyer an intermediate mortgage until they qualify for a new loan, and or handle their colorful past so they can get a loan.
Yep.
So the seller is giving the buyer or us an intermediate loan. And they're getting 70% of market value to do this, more money. Right?
Sure.
And when they do this, it takes their deal from one profit. So when they sell with cash, there's one profit.
Right.
Okay. When they sell with this, we call it a slut deal. I'm going to go over that in a minute. But when they sell with this 3-year program, it now is 5 profits. So it turns them from a 1 profit pony to a 5 profit game. Right? And here's how. So the first profit, right, which we never ever talk about in this deal structure. We never ever talk about it. It's the biggest profit center for the seller. The biggest profit center.
That we don't talk about?
We don't talk about it in this deal structure.
Which is what?
What they owe to what they're selling for, their equity. Because we don't ask them what they owe in this deal structure. We just ask them how much they want. I want $300,000. Okay, I'll give you $300,000.
Yeah.
Right? Here we don't have to discount at all. We don't have to discount it because we're going to mark the price of the house up 5% to 10%. Right? And the buyer's willing to pay that because if you were to buy my computer for me for $1,000 today and you paid me $1,000 in cash, then you paid $1,000 for my computer.
Yep.
But if you bought my computer today for $1,000 and you swiped your credit card and you paid for it over 24 months, you're now paying the interest of the credit card and you're not paying $1,000 anymore. Well, people that buy houses that don't have money and aren't qualified for a bank will pay that extra money because it's the American way. I didn't invent it. I'm just emphasizing it on real estate. Right? So they will pay on a $300,000 house, they'll pay $315,000 and put $15,000 down. Right? So the first profit center is their equity, which we never ask them in this deal. Now, other deals we ask it, but not in this deal. Right? The second profit, right, is the cash flow. So let's say they have a $300,000 house and they owe $185,000. First of all, because of the appreciation of COVID, it's not worth $300,000. It was probably worth $100,000 or $200,000 when they bought it.
That's right.
Just numbers.
Yeah.
And they owe $185,000. Well, their mortgage payment on $185,000 is probably $1,400 with the taxes, insurance, everything in it loaded up. Right? But number one thing that happens is their mortgage is based on $200,000.
And 3 or 4%.
And the lower percentage. Now we're coming along and saying, okay, Mr. Buyer, if you want to live in this house, your mortgage payment or your lease payment, the word lease is different than rent. We say lease to own. We don't say rent to own. Rent means you're using the property and you have a landlord.
Yep.
A lease, there's no landlord. Okay, in my world. A lease is you're using the property while you get qualified. Yeah. Okay. So what happens is the lease amount is not set off a rentometer or any rents in the area, any of that. It's set based on how much the house is worth. So we're going to go in the mortgage calculator, and I know that most don't agree with this, but I use the $315,000. I don't take in consideration the deposit money they're going to give me. And today's interest rate in the mortgage calculator is 7.77%. So we use 8%, right? And we figure the mortgage. So let's say the mortgage is now $2,000, right? You don't want to have a rent payment. Say the rent in the area is only $1,500. So why would the buyer pay $2,000 instead of $1,500? Well, it's because they have the opportunity of American Dream and they're going to own the house.
Right.
More importantly, because they are now owners and their money is just not getting thrown away, they have the potential of buying this house, right? Now, none of that money goes towards their equity unless we do down payment assistance, which is another show, right? The point is that when they're paying this money, this $2,000, they are owners of this property. They're telling their neighbors, oh yeah, I bought this house, I own it. And the lease payment is secondary.
Mhm.
When you do rent to own, it's rent and then lease. And when you get those people, their thinking is not the same. So there's a difference, and it's hard to explain, but we do options with a lease,
Mhm.
right? We do it backwards because when they go in, they own.
Yeah, you want that mentality because they're going to take care of the property, and the
Right.
seller's not worried because it's not a rental. They own the property. They're pre-owning it. How about that?
Right.
They're pre-owning it.
Right. That's good. I should start saying that. I forget about that because you say it all the time. It's a pre-ownership, right? So
I'll
the
write it
point,
down.
yeah, the point is that the seller is getting $600 a month positive cash flow now because their mortgage is 14 and the new mortgage, and you don't want the renter, the rent to own person, to pay less than what the mortgage is because that'll dissuade them from going to get a mortgage.
Mhm.
Right. So if you're charging $1,500 a month because Rentometer says that, and a mortgage is $2,000 a month, who do you know in their right mind is going to want to go get a mortgage and raise their expenses by $6,000 a year or $500 a month?
Yeah.
Not many. So you're better off to make the rent $2,200 and tell them they can save $200 a month or $300 a month when they go get a mortgage, and it incentivizes them.
Yep, that's better.
Okay. So that's the second profit center. First profit center is the equity in the seller's deal. Second profit center is they're going to now make cash flow, right? The third profit center is principal reduction. Now, principal reduction is, as you so eloquently put it many podcasts ago.
Who, me?
Yeah.
What I said.
Principal reduction is when you pay down your principal or put more profit in your pocket, because when you reduce your principal amount that you owe the bank, right, you're getting more equity. So if it's $100, that means you just made $100 profit on that house because now you don't owe the bank $100. That money goes in your pocket, not the bank's pocket, right?
It's in the piggy bank.
So every time your tenant's buyer gives you a check, the $1,400 or the $2,000, you're going to take $1,400 of that and pay the bank. And out of that $1,400, you're going to have $100, $200, $300, $500, $1,000, wherever you are in your bank loan over the 30 years that you borrow the money from, on how much is going to principal reduction. So you have the now where you were living in the house and you were paying the mortgage payment, that mortgage payment you were paying the principal reduction. Now you're not in the house anymore. You have somebody using the house, giving you $2,000 a month. You got $600 a month cash flow, plus the $1,400 a month is not your money, but they're reducing your mortgage. That's a benefit to the seller. Number 4, we save them the 10 to 15% on closing costs, right? Because we're going to do all that for them. And yes, for those thinker brains that are listening to me who overanalyze everything and don't do deals, but they have all the questions for me, right?
And all the problems.
All the problems, yeah. There will be a 2 to 3% buyer, 2 to 3% closing costs for the seller when the buyer cashes out in 2 or 3 years from now. But that's better than 15%. And usually the 2 or 3% is the conveyance tax and any tax proration or water bill proration or oil proration. It's usually that kind of stuff. So it's not really a closing cost other than the taxes, right? Number 5, the seller does not live in the property any longer, which means they can now claim on their taxes depreciation. Depreciation breaks down to 3.64%, and that 3.64% is taxed based on your personal tax number or your tax rate.
Your bracket.
Bracket, yeah. So if your tax bracket is 38%, the 3.64% is going to be taxed on your tax bracket. Right?
Yep.
And then number 6, we break down in the option agreement, or we actually bake it right into the option agreement is what I should say, we bake in 0.25% increase in the property from month 1 or month 2 as appreciation, which is 3% a year. And the reason why we do that is because over the course of 50 or 100 years, the average appreciation has been 3%.
Mm-hmm.
You go over 10 years, it's an average of 3%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So those are the 6 profit centers that we are now offering this seller that wants overpayment. This is how we're getting the 70%. Now, let's do the math on it. Let me rattle off some numbers mathematically, right?
Yep.
So on a $300,000 house. So number 1, which is the equity, we don't know what that is. We don't know how much money they're making on equity because we're not asking what they owe. Mm-hmm. So this 70% has nothing to do with their equity. So the 70% we're going to get them is above and beyond their equity. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you get how gluttonous this profit is for the seller. It's hard for them to say no, right? Number 2, the cash flow. Okay, on a $300,000 house, it's going to be huge, often because the lease amount is calculated, like I said, at 8%. We already described that, and they're paying 3%. Mm. Plus, they have appreciation on the house, so it's going to be huge, right? Yep. So for this example, the seller's paying $1,400 a month, and we charge $2,000 a month. That's $21,600 over 36 months. That cash flow, that's $600 a month cash flow. Yep. And if you do 600 times 36, it's $21,600. Mm-hmm. Now we have the principal reduction, right, for each month, which adds up to, in this case, $11,747. Now we have a calculator that does all this, and we use an amortization chart, right? And the amortization chart is set at 12 months into the loan. Mm. So when I'm telling you that principal reduction, it's at the 12-month mark of the maturity of the loan.
That's real conservative.
Many people are 5 years or 10 years, and they're making way more money than $11,000 over 36 months. But I dropped it down to the lowest point that I thought it would be, right, which is 12 months in their mortgage, which means because every month you make a payment, there's interest and then there's principal. And every month it changes because you're down paying the principal so much, the interest keeps getting lower, right? Yeah. That's the reason why we have amortization formulas, right? But in this case, at the 12-month point, it's $11,747. The closing costs at 15% is $42,750. Okay?
Yep.
Then our depreciation over the 36 months, after we take in consideration, I think we did a study, and I think the average person pays 25% or 35% or so. I forgot the number, but we averaged what the average tax bracket is for a normal American, and we use that. It might be 38%. I forgot what it is. So please don't hold me to that. Right, but at the time when we built the calculator, we did an average of the tax brackets in the United States, and we used that. But in this particular case, so we took 3.64% on the $300,000, and we did the tax bracket stuff for you. It gives us $6,643 over 36 months. Okay. And then our appreciation over 36 months is $26,427. $26,427, which gives us a grand total of $94,167 profit to the seller without their equity. Now, let's say now in the example I'm giving you, we're saying that they bought for $200,000. Right, so they have $115,000 worth of equity because we said they owed $185,000, right?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Plus the $94,167. That means they're collecting $209,000 at the closing.
And you could compare that to what they would collect if they just sold it outright. That would be a very, very real number, wouldn't it?
Well, and what you're saying is that right. So they're making $94,167 with the numbers we just gave you.
Yeah.
Okay, and you probably have to go back because I went quick through them, but you have to go back in the podcast and listen to it a couple times, right?
Mm-hmm. Write them down.
So technically, the seller is selling for $394,167. So they're selling for $395.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, if they were to do a cash deal, like I went over, so if you take the $395, right, and you subtract the $270 that they would get if they did a cash deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that gives us $125,000 profit.
The difference.
The difference between the cash deal and if they waited 36 months. Now, if you divide that by 36 months, that's $3,500 a month over 3 years they're making in profit.
Jesus.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have this asset already in their name. They're no longer going to have to worry about it. There is no management to it at all because we're going to turn them into a banker. I mean, think about it. When your toilet breaks or the grass needs to be cut or a tree falls on your house, do you call your banker?
Mm-hmm. Nope.
Well, you can, but you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere, right?
Unless you need a loan, more money.
This is the position your seller is going to be. This is how you're going to leave your seller in the end, is you're going to put them in this position of being the seller. They're just collecting money. This is the ultimate ATM mailbox money.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're putting your seller in that position. But you have to tell your seller that you're doing this. They don't understand that. So when we say these are the only 2 deals you should be paying attention to, any rookie should be paying attention to. Forget about all the other deals. Now, here's what's going to happen. By virtue of you changing your mindset, by you thinking, oh, I can do a deal with no matter what my seller tells me. They say they want all cash. Perfect. Here's what I'm going to do.
Yep.
It takes the ridge, like 2 trains on the same track heading towards one another, right? One comes from the left, one comes from the right, and they collide, right? That's a ridge. That's like a mental energy. That's like in your mind, you have 2 datums, one coming from the left and one coming from the right, and they collide in your mind and you stop. You think, I want to do creative real estate, but everybody wants cash. That's like those 2 trains coming together and colliding, and all of a sudden there's an explosion in the middle.
Yeah, you're talking to somebody. You're talking to somebody. You go, gee, I hope he doesn't want all cash. Gee, I hope he doesn't want all cash. You're trying to talk to somebody, hoping they don't ask for cash.
Right.
And you can't have a conversation hoping something doesn't happen.
The point is in your mind that collision happened, and you're stuck with that residual of that mental mass, that mental collision, that mental energy that is not true.
Let's call it what it is. It's a problem.
Yeah.
We sit here as people trying to buy houses, and we go like, well, I got this problem. I hope he doesn't say that, because he does. I have a problem. I can't.
Right.
So you just change that until I can.
All right. So let's finish off here. So this is 70%. So 394,167. So we'll say 395, just to round it off, or 394, whatever, is 70% above market value, which is 300,000. And always leaves the seller stunned when we use our script and calculator, which, by the way, if you go to podcast number 415, which is a remarkable but invisible creative real estate loophole revealed, the calculator, the first version of the calculator that I invented which is the script and the Excel calculator, the Excel form calculator is there. We've since updated the calculator, and it's in Creative REI Reply, and you can. It's much easier to use in Creative REI Reply. But if you're a freebie and you're telling me you don't have any money because you're not doing deals, well, shame on you. You should jump in the pool and raise your necessity level, because if you're paying every single month to make deals, then you're going to start making deals, right? Bottom line. You're buying and selling an option agreement in both transactions. You're not buying and selling houses. You're buying and selling an option agreement, which controls the property, right? And that's the right to buy without the obligation, which means you make 5-figure paychecks while learning without any risk. Look at this. If you made 5%, if you marked up your properties 5%, and this buyer gave you 5%, now this is the Zilter system.
Mm-hmm.
A realtor charges 5%. They get the seller to pay that. We're going to charge 5%, get the buyer to pay that. And that's going to become more and more real. I know right now I'm talking crap to you right now, but that's as the realtor system goes on from August 2024, and it goes on and on and on, more and more people are going to be aware of, as a buyer, they're going to have to pay to buy a house.
Yeah. There's not going to be a need for buyer's agents. You don't need a buyer agent to get you to a restaurant or a store. You going to buy stuff. Right. People can just buy directly. It's gonna be a just selling situation at some point.
Now look at this. If you do 5% on a $100,000 house, you make $5,000. On a $200,000 house, you make $10,000. On a $300,000 house, you make $15,000. On a $400,000 house, you make $20,000. On a $500,000 house, you make $25,000. $600,000 house, you make $30,000. On a $700,000 house, you make $35,000. On an $800,000 house, you make $40,000. I think my math is wrong here. On a $900,000 house, you make $50,000. I think it's 45.
Yeah, 45. Yep.
Here and here's the interesting thing about this, Peter. It doesn't take any more work to do a $100,000 house than it does to make $5,000 than it does to do a $90,000 house to make 45 or 50 grand. Now, this is at 5%. What happens if you're a little bit decent on the phone, or the seller's a little bit motivated, and they're like, "Oh, that $300,000, I would sell that for $275."
Yeah.
Or I would sell that for $250. I would sell that for what I owe on it. See, the interesting thing is when you do these deals and you take that ridge or that mental idea that they're going to ask cash and you're going to freeze up and not know what to do. When you remove that, you'll talk to more people. And when you talk to more people, more other deals are going to happen. So when you go into the deal thinking, no matter what they say, if they want cash or they want more, they want to be overpaid, I can handle that. You're going to be much more relaxed. And because you're much more relaxed, there are going to be people that are going to tell you things. You're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe they just said that. Like, I don't care if I make any profit on this house. I just want to get rid of it. That's a subject to deal. Or, you know what? I'm really kind of worried about selling it because I've owned it for like 25 years. And I don't know. I'm going to wait till next year because I don't want to pay the capital gains tax. Now you go into like a seller finance deal. Well, wait a minute. How about if you're worried about capital gains tax? Well, if we do seller financing, we can fix that for you. We can reduce your seller capital gains tax immensely by paying monthly. And that's a whole nother story. But my point is these deals are going to fall in your lap. And this is what's happening with Creative REI Reply. What's happening is so many people are doing these two deal structures I'm talking about, the Zelter system and the overpaying system, which we call a slot deal. A slot deal stands for lease option transfer. It's like
sandwich lease.
Yeah, sandwich lease option transfer, right? Which means you get a lease option from your seller and you're going to transfer it to your buyer and your buyer's going to pay you for it, right? That's what that means. Okay? So it's no different. So your farm markets are better to be in the higher price ranges. If you have a farm market like in Seattle where the average house is $800,000 or $900,000, you're better off to do this there, right? In fact, owners of $900,000 properties are often easier to deal with because they understand money better, and they're easier to talk to. Okay. All right, good. Last point, because we're at 9 minutes after the hour. Last point. I wanted to let everybody know that we stopped selling Creative REI Reply. It is no longer for sale. Okay. Basically, what we've done is we've started selling motivated leads because that's what our users want, right? And we're selling leads for as much as, not as low as much as $1.99 per lead, motivated lead. We're actually selling them as low as 79 cents per lead. depending on how many you buy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you pay $1.99 per lead, we're actually giving you the software for free to use with your leads. And we do 90% of the work so that you get deals.
Mm.
And when I switched this, that's where all this stuff is coming from, is when I switched this, we're getting more people using the software because it's free. They're buying leads and they're getting it for free, right? So they buy the leads for $1.99 a piece, right? And then we put them in their system for them. We text them. We answer their texts for them. They get on the phone and we make an appointment for them. So we're guaranteeing in our system now, we're guaranteeing that you get at least 500 leads in 90 days. Guaranteeing. That's the least amount. Most people are getting thousands, but we guarantee at least 500 leads, right? We're gonna text them for you. We're gonna answer those texts for you. We're gonna make you 2 to 3 appointments per week for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna make the phone call, and then we're gonna do all the paperwork for you, and then we're gonna help you sell it. We're gonna put everything on autopilot. So 90% of the work is done. We're doing 90% of the work for you. All you need to do is buy the lead and make the phone call and make the appointment, because we don't have enough staff to make phone calls for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you want to know how this works, or if you want more information on this, then there's a link inside of the description that you can go to, and you can watch the webinar that I did that explains all of it. It also goes into depth on a little bit more on these 2 deal structures that I'm talking about, and why you would do one and why you wouldn't do the other. Right? So there's certain things in the conversation that will trigger which one you should do and which one you shouldn't do. And I explained that in the webinar, but mostly the webinar is about how you can pay $1.99 per lead, and we'll give you the software for free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I really want to help people do deals, and I hope you're getting that. Right? So that's the end of the show. Thank you for listening. Make sure you go check out the links in the chat, in the description. Make sure you subscribe to wherever you're watching us or listening to us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you leave a comment. And if you have any questions, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, or you can go to creativereireply.com, or you can go to WhatsApp Messenger and look for our mastermind group, which is called Let's Talk Real Estate. Okay? Over and out. We will be back here at show number 420. That's it. Flourish and prosper. Thanks for listening. Good day.